Hi, I'm Reverend Jake Sabe, and welcome to Children's Bible Stories. Alright children, our Bible story for today is going to be the story of Michael and Daniel. So in the book of Daniel, Daniel recounts how he had this terrifying vision of a man. So on the 24th day of the first month, Daniel was standing down by the great river, that is the river Tigris. And he lifted up his eyes, and behold, standing before him, there was a vision of a man. The man was clothed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, that's a shiny rock. His face was like the appearance of lightning. His eyes were flaming torches. His arms and legs like the gleams of burnished bronze. And the sound of his words were like the sounds of a multitude. And Daniel said, I alone saw this vision. He said there was others with him there. They had not seen the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and so they fled. So even though they were unable to see this man appear to them, they still felt something, and it made them so scared that they ran away. And this meant that Daniel alone was left there to see this vision. And Daniel said he retained no strength, so he felt weak. And he heard the sounds of the words coming from this man. And he heard the sounds of his words. And Daniel fell by his face with a deep sleep on the ground. So who is this figure?
Jesus.
Yeah, this is the second person of the Trinity who came to stand before Daniel. And Daniel says that, behold, a hand touched him. And Daniel was raised trembling to his knees. And the man began to speak to him. He said, O Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you. Stand upright, for now I have been sent to you. And Daniel says, when he said these things, I stood up, trembling though. So Daniel, even though he went from being face down to kneeling to now standing, he was still trembling at the sight of this figure. And the figure began to speak to him and said, Fear not, Daniel. For from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humble yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. So, Michael comes in to help him. For I was left there with the king of Persia, and came to make you understand what it is to happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision is yet to come. So here in the book of Daniel, you have Jesus coming before Daniel, and then he talks about how Michael came to help him. Now, in this passage, Michael is referred to as a chief prince. He's also referred to as Daniel's prince. This has caused some people to think that Michael was not referring to the Archangel Michael, but was referring to a human prince. However, there is two problems with that. One, how is a human prince helping out Jesus? And two, when we get to chapter 12 of the book of Daniel, Daniel is given a vision of the end times, in which Daniel also sees a vision of the resurrection of the dead and the final judgment. So in Daniel 12, we are told that many who have fallen asleep and been buried in the earth will awake, and those who believe will go to everlasting life, and those who do not believe will go to everlasting contempt. We are also told that there will be a book that will be opened, and whoever's name is written in that book will be saved. This is a reference to the second coming of Christ and to the resurrection of the living and the dead and to the final judgment. And at the beginning of that chapter, it says that the prince, Michael, shall arise. But if Michael was a human prince that lived at the time of Daniel, then how could Michael arise at the second coming of Christ to bring about the resurrection of the living and the dead? Therefore, the Michael in Daniel cannot be a human prince, but must be an angelic figure. And he is called a chief prince, which makes him a chief angel. In the book of Jude, Michael is referred to as an archangel, a chief angel. And in the book of Daniel, Jesus, or the man who appeared on the river, he refers to Michael as one of the chief princes, meaning he's not the only chief prince. And this is why many Christians have historically taught that there isn't just one archangel, Michael, but that there are multiple archangels. In the book of Tobit, which is an apocryphal book, he refers to there being 7 archangels, and that's why the church has historically taught that there are 7 archangels. Continuing on with Daniel's vision, when the man had spoken these words to Daniel, he again fell face down to the ground and became mute. Another reason for why we think this man is Jesus. And Daniel says that, behold, one with the likeness of the Son of Man, which would be Jesus, touched him on his lips, and he opened his mouth and spoke. And Daniel said, O my Lord, which would again suggest that this figure is not an angel but is Jesus. And Daniel says, O my Lord, by reason of the vision pains have come upon me, and I have lost my strength. How can my servant talk with my Lord? For now no strength remains in me, and no breath is left in me. So here you have Daniel referring to this man as my Lord, and Daniel referring to himself as the servant of the Lord. This is another reason to suggest that this man who appeared to Daniel is not an angel, but is
God, Jesus.
And Daniel says again, the one having the appearance of a man touched me, and he strengthened me. And he said to me, O man, greatly loved, fear not. Peace be with you. Be strong and of good courage. And as he spoke to Daniel, Daniel said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. Do you not know why I have come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. So here, Jesus is promising that the prince or the king of Persia was going to be defeated and would be no more, and that this would be the work not of man, but of God. That Jesus would fight against the king of Persia and get rid of him, and that he would be replaced by the king of the Greeks, which is referring to Alexander the Great, who would come and conquer the Persian Empire. And then Jesus, the man, says to Daniel, But I tell you, what is inscribed in the book of truth, there is none who contend by my side, except this Michael, your prince. And so again, we see here that Michael is described as being one of the chief princes, and as Jesus says, there is none except Michael who is able to stand alongside him, which would suggest that not only is Michael one of the chief archangels, but that he's the boss of the archangels. And this is why Michael is the one who rises up at the end times, and why it is Michael who will lead the army of the Lord against the dragon. I've been your host, Reverend Jake Zabel. Goodbye and God bless.